Tyler Van Dyke stacking good days back to back. Really nice to see. And a really great day from another one of those 2024 freshmen that we've talked about so much. Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always. I know there's a lot of things you could be doing with your time, whether you're watching live, you're watching on YouTube, you're listening on the podcast later, whatever it is. Thank you so much for being a part of this, the Locked On Podcast Network, and being an everydayer and being here with us as we build this community. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This summer, FanDuel's hooking up all listeners with boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, let's start practice. Coming back from today's practice, a couple big things I want to talk about. Let's start with some of the players that really impressed today. Listen, I keep talking about this 2024 class and the talent they brought in, and we've mentioned the running backs, and we mentioned Haywood, and we've mentioned Heiberger and Lucas and Mandel, and Anelu Lafaele had a pretty dominant practice today. And if you follow some of the other people on social media, you've already seen some of it. Anelu Lafaele was incredible today. And again, he's part of that 24 class, big-time talent. He reminds me a lot of Herbig. There's a lot of Herbig in his game, which I think he's said before. He's talked about it, right? That's part of the reason he was drawn to Wisconsin is the journey that Nick Herbig kind of blazed. He's following a little bit of that path. Certainly, he's his own person, just like Herbig is, but really good get-off. Great spin move. If you guys remember, if you can go back to when Chris Borland was a freshman, they actually put him at defensive end at times and just said, go get the passer, because he had such a low center of gravity that bigger tackles just struggled with him, right? I remember a Minnesota game. He came in and was a defensive end. Lafaele's got a little bit of that, right? He's got such an explosive first step that he really forces offensive lineman to kick step to create space, and then he can spin inside them. He's really good. He gave the number 2 offensive line all sorts of trouble today. He gave Emerson Mandel some trouble, and when he was lining up a tackle, made multiple plays. And it's against the number 2 offensive line for the most part, but he's also a true freshman. Like he's really impressive. Again, great get off, really good, really good frame. So he's 240 pounds, good spin move, good with his hands. Made plays, a lot of plays today. How much will he play this year? It's tough. We know the logjam, but he is positioning himself to get reps this year. Like if he continues to practice like this, they're not gonna, and it becomes 3rd and 9. They might want to find reps for him because he's just been that explosive and that dynamic. And he was good yesterday too. I mentioned it yesterday. This is a player that's creating disruption and getting into the backfield. Yeah, he might be positioning himself to get some real reps this year, and definitely in the future, plant the flag in the ground. Like this kid could be a bit of a game wrecker from a disruption standpoint. So I want to start there with Lafaele. Let's get into Tyler Van Dyke. Again, one of the stars of the practice. What do we always talk about with quarterbacks? Protect the ball. He was very careful with the ball, didn't turn it over, didn't fumble it. Very clean from that aspect. I think this is 2 days in a row where he stacked good practices together. Let's talk about some of the good. I thought he was decisive even in some plays under pressure. He was able to deliver it, find guys, really good on the intermediate routes, crossers, drags, that kind of stuff, slants, very accurate, really tight ball placement on some throws. There was a really nice read he made on a read option where he tucked the ball against the ones, and he might have been able to score on it, but it was probably a 40, even if it was against a live athletic defense, it was probably still a 40, 50-yard scamper. So he's showing the legs, which I think he's going to play this year. He's a quarterback that's going to do some damage in that aspect. He's demonstrating more of a control of the offense. It looks like he understands where he's wanting to go with the ball. And again, the ball placement's been really impressive. He was very, very accurate today. He's able to feather the ball. He had a really nice throw to Tretch for about a 20-yard pass where he feathered it over an underneath zone and in front of a safety. Tretch got nailed on that catch and held onto it, which was also nice to see. We'll talk about Tretch in a second. But he's been really good in the short to intermediate routes. And I think that's really important. Protect the ball, be accurate, move the chains, use your legs. A really encouraging day from Tyler Van Dyke. The one caveat I would put out there, and the one area where I'm still, I think we need to see it a little bit more, is the Badgers have struggled hitting the deep shots a little bit, right? They've pushed it deep. They've taken some shots. Again today, partially because I want to get into this as well. I think the coverage has been pretty good on the back end. This secondary group has held up. There's been a couple plays in the last couple practices where quarterbacks have had to kind of throw the ball out of bounds. They haven't been able to find somebody open. The deep routes in general have been covered pretty well, but you still got to hit some of them, right? Because you're not going to be able to short to intermediate all the way down the field against Iowa, against Alabama, against Oregon, against Penn State. You got to hit some deep balls. And once again today, they really weren't able to do that. They weren't able to connect on those deep shots. I think that's something that's again, a little bit of a pause. We need to see that. But overall, again, I thought Van Dyke was really good, really, really solid. Didn't turn the ball over. And it looks like he's separating. If we're being honest with ourselves, we're going to I'm going to go position by position in a second. But he was better than Braedyn Locke, again, for the second straight day. I think this is not based on any type of intel, but I think you have to start making that shift and start moving towards Van Dyke as the guy, so he gets more and more of those number one reps, because I think he was pretty demonstratively better today. The other positive I want to talk about was the offensive line, specifically the tackles. They're holding up pretty well, and I know that was a big concern from last year, based on some of the Washington States, based on some of what we saw early in the season. And then you heard even in spring how the tackles were struggling at times against Pius, against Lowry, against some of these returning edge rushers that the Badgers have brought in. I think the tackles have held up really well. And the quarterbacks, even when they're going live, they're having, for the most part, a pocket to throw from. They're having time. The Badgers are throwing some blitzes at them. Running back pass protection, I thought, has been exemplary. I want to talk about that in a second. But I think the tackles have held up well, which has enabled Tyler Van Dyke to kind of scan the field, find those intermediate to deeper throws. Overall, that's a really good sign, because this is a more athletic defense that is out on the field for the Badgers than it was last year. That's pretty obvious to me. And being able to hold up in pass protection is a big key to this year when you look at some of the defensive fronts the Badgers are going to have to play. So good sign there. Good sign, Tyler Van Dyke stacking practices, and a really good sign from Anelu Lafaele, who he might be too good to keep off the field this year. Let's see what we got in some comments. White Marlin, the 24th class has got me hyped. Yeah, they could be really good. Christian Gross says this is a separation issue or an O-line issue regarding deep shots. Yeah, I think it's more of a separation issue. It's a great question, Christian, but I don't think it's been the pressure as much as it's been receivers have struggled a little bit creating separation. And there have been a couple chances. We talked about yesterday. There was an opportunity to hit Green. There was an opportunity to hit Green on a deep shot, and Bryson Green on a deep shot, and they didn't connect. He had beaten Amari Snowden. Today, CJ Williams had a couple steps. Braedyn Locke wasn't able to connect with them. So I think the coverage has been good. And I think there's been a few separation issues. But again, how do you separate those two things, right? Is it a separation issue or is it really good coverage? When we get to cornerbacks, I'm going to talk about Nizer Forkran a little bit. That's a guy who I think has really stood out. We know what Rico can do. So the coverage has been better. It's been good. It's been solid. But again, you got to find a way to hit some deep shots. You got to find a way to push the ball vertically a little bit. Otherwise, that field compresses, and it's going to get harder and harder to march down the field against an Iowa if you can't once in a while threaten the safeties and hit some of those deeper shots. So we'll take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to go position by position: quarterback, running back, offensive line, receiver. What stood out? Maybe something from the younger guys I saw. We'll do that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show. And a quick second, always to say thank you. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel remains the number one source for all of your sports betting needs. Everything you need from futures, teasers, parlays, spreads. It's all over there at FanDuel.com. Listen, and they're fast. It's easy. It's simple to use. You log in. You don't have to figure out where things are because it's intuitive. And when you win, it's really easy to get the payouts, right? It's not like this weird overseas thing that feels shady and you never know even if you're going to win, if you're going to get the money. FanDuel's not like that. It's simple. It's easy. Again, as always, please do it responsibly. But they are the official sportsbook of Major League Baseball for a reason, the official sportsbook of the Locked On podcast for a reason, because they are reliable, trustworthy, easy to use. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of what's left of your summer. Again, FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball, official sportsbook of the Locked On Network. That's FanDuel.com. All right, let's keep going here. Get a couple more of your comments. Robert Sorensen says, let's go. Cujo said, I heard CJ look good today. Yep, we're going to talk about CJ Williams. He did look good today. Mitch Strauss said, first live show. Hey, Ryan, what's up, Mitch? I'll leave that comment up here, man. I'm stoked. Whenever we get somebody on for the first live show, I'm always stoked about it. So, Mitch, thank you so much for tuning in. All right, let's go position by position. Let's talk a little bit about what I thought stood out. Quarterback, I talked about Tyler Van Dyke. Again, I think it was a really good performance, a really controlled performance, a performance that feels like he understands the offense. We got to hit some deep shots. But let's talk about Braedyn Locke, because we talked about TVD already a little bit. I didn't think this was a great Braedyn Locke day. He had a fumble. We're going to talk about Leon Lowry forcing that, but I think he held the ball up to a little too long in that play. Lowry came from the backside. Talking about ball security, so he put the ball on the ground. He had another play where he just missed Nizer Forkreen. Forkreen kind of dropped into a bit of a hook zone, and Locke just kind of missed him. Tried to, I couldn't see, or I forget who he's throwing to, but it should have been picked. Nizer needs to catch that. I'm sure Paul Haynes was a little frustrated that he didn't convert on that opportunity, but yeah, that was a bad ball and really probably should have been a pick. So you have the opportunity for 2 turnovers there, depending on what happens with the fumble. And then there was some inaccuracies with Locke too. He had a couple passes knocked down at the line of scrimmage. It kind of, I almost wonder if it felt like, because I've seen Locke better than this, and it felt like almost if he thought the screws were tightening a little bit, because obviously Tyler Van Dyke had a good day yesterday. He was balling today. I wonder if he kind of was trying to do a little too much, but a couple of turnover worthy plays today, a couple of balls batted at the line of scrimmage, a couple of inaccurate throws. This was not Locke's best day. And coupled that with Tyler Van Dyke kind of taking a step up and continuing to stack consistent practices, I feel like Van Dyke is probably moving ahead in this battle. And I'm not even sure if that's that controversial. So, yeah, I would have liked to have seen a better day. I'd still, listen, if Locke is your number 2, you still feel pretty good about the depth chart there. Mabry Metor getting reps with the 3s. I thought he had a good day today. I thought he was a little inconsistent yesterday. He's still a freshman. Like, he's a freshman quarterback. So there's always going to be growing pains. You see the physical skills with him for sure. I mentioned some of that yesterday using the legs. He had a really nice connection with Kyron Johnson today on a slant. Great timing. That was a big play. Would have gone for 30, 40 yards with Yak. So he looked pretty good today. I thought consistent, not a ton of reps. You had more reps with the one TVD and Locke today, but Mabry's coming along. That was a nice throw. He had a couple moments today. Cole LaCrue got some reps at the beginning of practice. He kind of gets reps with the 4s. There's very clearly, I know coming into this season and into practice, we had talked about who's going to be the number 3. Because we mostly thought, and I say we kind of as the collective Badger community, we mostly thought it would be Tyler Van Dyke, Braedyn Locke, and then who's going to be the 3, right? Is it Mabry, or is Cole LaCrue, now that he's healthy, going to kind of mount a challenge there? And if you just look at the reps, it's pretty clearly Mabry. Mabry's the 3. LaCrue is just down in that pecking order. And it's unfortunate because I think he's missed so much time with injuries. It's probably set him back. But yeah, that's kind of the pecking order there. That's what I saw from the quarterbacks. Let's go running backs. Man. And I am so impressed by Tyree Walker and his ability to pass pro. Again, I was charting some of they do individual pass rush stuff, right? Blockers against pass rushers. Tyree just buries people. He is so physical. I mean, he blocks like an inline tight end back there. And it's so good that we had some availability with Devin Spalding today, the running backs coach. And I specifically said, like, what does his physicality do as a pass protector? And yeah, you can tell Devin likes it. Like, Coach Spalding likes it. He said, yeah, that's something that the younger guys need to look towards. And that's something he brings to the room. He talked about it. Listen, if he's going to block like that, if he can protect a quarterback like that, that might be your third down back. He is so physical back there. And, I've charted it for a while, but yesterday you put Tyler Jansey. When I say I chart for a while, I've watched it for 2 days, but so I don't want to overstate what I've seen, but he put Tyler Jansey kind of in a pancake situation yesterday. Today I have some notes over here. He had some wins today as well. He doesn't get pushed back in the pocket. Like, he will step up with physicality, take on a blitzing inside linebacker, and just Stonewall Jackson him. Like, you don't get past him. So it's really impressive to see Tyree. I continue to be impressed with his game. The interior quickness, his ability to catch the ball. He feels like when he came over, I thought he would be more of this is your power back, short yardage guy. He's going to spell Ches a little bit, but Ches is still going to be like the third down guy. I kind of think, man, it might be he might be your every down back type guy. Yeah, I think he has that ability. Now, the next thing I want to get into is the running back depth chart is really good. So you still have Ches coming back. Ches is going to play. Chez is a leader in this group. He's still working through things. So we didn't really see him out there today, but Chez is going to play. Tywee is going to play a ton. He's been incredibly impressive. The two running backs, the freshmen we talked about, KD Akinmeli ripped off a couple really nice runs today. Had a 20-yarder over the left side, so he looks good, and we know he can catch the ball. Jackson Aker is going to play. He brings a level of physicality. I talked to him a little after practice. He's a guy that brings a lot to this offense as well, and they're going to use him in two-back sets. That's something Devin Spalding talked about. That's something we've seen in other areas. He gives you a bit of an H-back. And maybe think about how Kyle Shanahan uses his fullbacks a little bit as a guy who can occasionally slip out and catch a pass, who can lead block, who can be physical. You can see some of that with Aker this year. The running back depth chart is fascinating to me. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see how it shakes out because I think you're going to get four guys there that get reps. I think it's going to be Tywee. I think it's going to be Chez. I think Aker. And then I think one of the other guys is going to get consistent reps too. And then you're going to have people behind that four that are going to be capable of playing. It's a really, really deep, talented room. I'm really high in the running back group since we've been able to see them play. All right, let's go receiver next. A couple notes on the receivers. Chris Brooks, man. You speak about physicality with Aker. Chris Brooks brings that to the receiver room, and another really good day from him. He's strong hands, catches the ball in the middle. He can catch the ball with people draped all over him. Gives you physicality again at the edge as a blocker or somebody who can kind of box somebody out and make a catch. I think there's going to be some type of role for Chris Brooks Jr. this year. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't think it's going to be a huge role from a numerical perspective, but he looks really solid, man. And I don't know if they're going to be able to completely keep him off the field because he gives you something that the other guys I don't think really do. Maybe it's more of a third down guy who can make some possession catches and move the chains. And then also in the red zone, maybe as a lead blocker, if you're trying to get outside the numbers, outside the box, right? He could bury a cornerback. We saw a really great rep a couple days ago with him against Hunter Wohler, where, he kind of gave Wohler the business, and that's a 220-pound potential all Big Ten safety. Look for Chris Brooks to have a role this year. I'm very excited about what he could do. Tretch had a really nice catch. I mentioned he got nailed. I think it was Zachman that came over and knocked him to the ground. You don't see a lot of hitting like that in practice, but it's a bit of a bang play. He held on, got up, hyped up, gave the first down sign. Yeah, Tretch, it wasn't the biggest Tretch day, but he continued to show really all the talent that people have been hyped about for him. Seeing some KBJ. KBJ had Conberry Johnson, the 24 receiver, had a couple nice explosive plays in space. He's definitely, you can see the quickness. You can definitely see the quickness with KBJ. He's fat. He's small. I talked about Emilio Agard coming in and being a little bigger than I thought he would be. Kion almost feels like he's a little smaller than I thought he would be, but you can definitely see the explosiveness, the speed in space. Like I mentioned, he had a really nice catch off a slant from Met Toyer that he might have been able to. I don't think he would have housed it live, but he definitely picked up a good chunk of yardage after that. So I'm interested. He's down on the depth chart a little bit. Vernon Griffin is down on the depth chart a little bit. Didn't really get many reps today. So I know there's been talk about could he step up and be maybe that hidden weapon, that bigger boundary receiver for the Badgers this year. Based on just what we're seeing from a reps distribution standpoint, I would say probably not unless something changes. Vinny Anthony getting a lot of reps with the ones, and then you have CJ, you have Bryson, you have Tretch, you have Pauling. That's kind of the top group. Vinny Anthony had a solid day as well. CJ Williams, really good in the intermediate routes. He looks a little faster, a little cleaner, a little more physically developed. I like what we're seeing from CJ. I think this could be a bit of the year that we had hoped we would see last year from him, as he's maybe coming into his own a little bit more. He's a little more physical. Quick note on CJ. He caught a boundary receiver, or boundary, kind of an out route, and then used a stiff arm to put Rico into the ground, just showing some of that physicality. So I'm encouraged by what we've seen there. All right, let's take one more quick break for our friends of the show. Come back with your comments, and then get into offensive line, defensive line, tight ends, linebackers. Again, finish out what we saw from practice today. Really good day for the Badgers. Excited to keep going here. Let's take one quick break for our friends of the show over at eBay Motors. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at eBay Motors. And listen, I brought Nick Osen, rode back to Badger 247 reporter, rode back to me from practice to the coffee house today. And he'd probably tell you, my car could use some eBay Motors. It's a bit of a work in progress. Like the door kind of clicks when you open it. Feels like it might fall off. It's got a little Mad Max vibe on that side. It has hit a guardrail or two. But listen, she gets me from point A to point B. And if you want to take care of your ride or die that gets you from point A to point B, which I need to do. You got to go over to eBay Motors, find the best parts, the biggest selection, over 122 million parts are available. And you never have to go into a store. You never have to wonder what's in the inventory or if they're going to have the right part there. Don't stress it. Like, just know that you're going to get the best price, the biggest inventory, and the correct part. More importantly, the correct part on eBay Motors for your ride or die. The right parts, the right fit, the right prices. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers, but that is the place you have to go if you want to get all your car parts. You keep your ride or die alive over at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thank you again for making Locked On Badgers your first podcast listen of the day. When you're done here, go check out our Locked On College Football podcast. Spencer does an incredible job. All the big news days, all the big news items from the week, NIL news, transfers, portals, conference previews. It's all available over on our Locked On College podcast. That is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. All right, let's keep going here. Let's finish wrapping up the positionals. Let's talk offensive line. So, again, I highlighted the tackles. I think Nelson and Malman look really good. I thought the snaps were great today. I know I mentioned yesterday there were a few errant snaps that looked fine today. I think the O-line is going to be really good. What I want to talk about is that second string O-line. Okay, I want to talk about what we're seeing there because this is kind of a dual-edged sword, right? The young talent is coming. That second string offensive line is 3 true freshmen. Colin Cubberly at right guard, Emerson Mandel at right tackle, Kevin Haywood at left tackle. It's coming. But the second string line did struggle a little bit, just a little bit, which should be expected. Like, they're true freshmen, but you can see the physical skills, right? Emerson Mandel had a great rep going up against Tackett Curtis. Tackett Curtis tried to blitz him on the edge. Emerson Mandel put him on his back, right? He's showing you the physical strength, this physicality. That's a player that didn't come from an offense that really passed much in high school, so he's still getting used to it. You saw some struggles where he was going up against Anelu Lafaele. Lafaele is a really advanced pass rusher as a freshman. He's going to give a lot of offensive linemen problems. So you saw some issues there with Mandel, and I still kind of wonder if Mandel eventually is going to move inside to guard. I think that still might be his better spot. But again, you see the physical skill set. You see Kevin Haywood run around out there. The dude moves around like a deer. Like, there's such a huge upside with him. You see Colin Cubberly holding his own at right guard, and they opened up a couple holes. So that second string offensive line, tons of upside, but still young, right? This is definitely a year where if the Badgers could stay healthy on the offensive line, it's going to be for the best. But you can definitely see the vision in the future as those guys mature. This offensive line could be a bedrock strength of the program because they look the part. Again, you already seen 3 true freshmen in the 2D, and that's what we saw again today. So I'm very interested by that. I think they look really good, really solid. A few struggles here and there, but some of those struggles were caused by a guy like Anelu Lafaele just being a beast, by a guy like Lane just being a beast. So I like it, but just be aware there's a lot of youth there. And if this is a season where injuries happen to prop up on the offensive line, it could cause some issues. Tight ends, not a ton to go there. We did see Jackson McGonough get on the field a little bit, but not too much came out of it. I think they're still trying to find maybe a role for him or work him in. I would highlight Tucker Ashcraft. This is definitely a tight end. They definitely like the power and the versatility he gives them. He gets a lot of reps moving across line of scrimmage. Again, feeling similar to Aker and Nowakowski. They all kind of, to some degree, fit different roles of that H-back tight end blocking role with some ability to be used as an outlet receiver in this offense. I'm excited to see what Tucker Ashcraft does in year 2. I think he's taken a bit of a step there. But yeah, not a lot on tight ends today. All right, let's go defensive line. Braedyn Lane. What a pickup he's going to be. Braedyn Lane looked really good again today. Some of those reps against the number 2 offensive line, but he's working his way up. I think what stands out with him is he's a big physical guy. And this is no knock to a guy like Elijah Hills, but when you stack the 2 of them together, Braedyn Lane just looks different, right? He looks like a Keanu Benton type of physicality. Moves really well. Got quick pressure off the edge on one possession that forced Tyler Van Dyke to roll out. It was disruptive in a couple other places. There was a running play through the middle where he stacked up Kodonko on the inside and stopped the running play. He's just a bear, and he's a physical, tough defensive lineman that moves well. I think he's a really good pickup for the Badgers. Defensive lineman outside that, JTJ got a sack later in the practice. Kate McDonald had a really nice rep, driving the left tackle or right tackle into the backfield and causing a little bit of disruption there. Probably a guy we don't talk about enough. There's a great frame and a pretty good motor there with McDonald, so I thought he had a nice rep. Let's go to linebackers. Leon Lowry. Lowry had a really nice day. He forced a fumble on Locke coming from the backside. Really good motor, kept after it, got in there as Locke was trying to step up in the pocket. Also had a really nice play in a run defense, kind of chasing that ball play down from the backside and getting into it. He looks good. Still, Tackett Curtis is getting in there. We're still kind of waiting on some of those flashes. It feels like he's still finding his footing a little bit. Tackett Curtis, the highly regarded transfer out of USC. I think we're still kind of waiting on that to click a little bit. But I'm not too worried about that. He missed a lot of time with injuries. I think Leon Lowry had a really good day. Jaheim Thomas, once again, flashes. Like he's a guy who can play everywhere. Thomas can play outside, inside. He flows really well. That might be along with Chaney. If you put Chaney, Lowry, Peterson, who had a good day today, and Thomas together, that's a really good rush defense. Those guys all flow really well, tackle really well. Chase plays down from the backside, have a lot of speed. So I was impressed today by Thomas, impressed by Peterson, impressed by Lowry. Let's go cornerbacks. Once again, another really nice day from Nizer Forkerine. Had a pass breakup on a slant, and he just has length, right? Forkerine just has length that makes it really difficult either in a zone or in man coverage. He eats up a lot of space. There was that play against Braedyn Locke where he kind of stepped into a hook zone, a short zone, should have picked it. The ball kind of went through his hands, but he is going to be that type of guy who, when he's in a zone, just occupies a little bit more space because of his length, because of his ability to get up in the air well. He's a good athlete. So I feel pretty good coming into spring, into the summer. I liked Rico, and I was kind of like, I hope Nizer can step up as that number 2. I'm not that worried about that anymore. If I'm being honest, after seeing him in practice a couple days after talking to him, I'm not that worried about that cornerback number 2 spot anymore. I think he's going to hold up really well. And that dovetails into what I was talking about earlier with our inability at times to hit some deep throws. The cornerbacks have held up. The cornerback coverage on deep has been pretty darn good. So I'll be confident about that. Let's get into some comments here. See if there's anything else that I missed. Jesse Wilder says, was Renfro snaps better today? Yeah, I thought he was really solid today. Really, really solid today. Christian Gross, Braedyn, when it comes to tip balls at the line of scrimmage, he had I think there was 3 tip today, 2 or 3. So it wasn't the cleanest day for Braedyn Locke once again. Nick Flav says, why aren't they throwing it deep to Vinny Anthony? He's fast. Yeah, I got to be honest. I certainly don't chart every throw, and maybe I missed the rep where they went deep to Vinny. But the coverage has been good. They've had a hard time creating some separation down the field. So maybe those routes have been there and they've just been covered up and the quarterbacks have gone to others. William Wojcicki says, dude, go Navy. Let's go. Certainly I have a Navy background. I was on submarines. I'm not sure if William was or not, but yeah, man, I'm all about the Navy. Robert Sorensen said, which freshman running back stood out today? Yeah, great question. I don't think any of them really stood out. I will say Dylan Jones had a couple really nice pass protection reps. They all look good there. Getting Atuka got some reps when Kohler Crew was quarterback with the 4s. He caught a nice pass, so it was nice to see getting Atuka out there, getting some work. This wasn't a day where any of the freshman running back like yesterday really, really, really stood out, but they're still in the battle, still getting reps. Darian Dupree had a catch. They look really natural catching the ball, and Devin Spalding talked about how natural they are, right? How Dylan is a one cut and go guy and how Darian is really smooth. So they think very highly of them, but this wasn't the day where they necessarily stood out as much. Wes says, how does the offense look versus last year's? So I wasn't able to see any of the practices last year, so I don't know how I'd compare that. I don't know if I have an apples to apples comparison. I'm not sure, to be honest. I think this offense is a little deeper in spots. I think the offense line is going to be a little bit better. I think the pieces around TVD are better, which is going to help. I don't know. I think it's ahead of last year's, but I don't think it's where it needs to be quite yet, if that makes sense. They got to be able to hit some deep shots. They got to be able to push the ball a little bit downfield. But I think it's better than it was last year. Jason Now, and I think I talked about Joseph Griffin and Jackson McGonough. I right now wouldn't feel super confident about either playing a big role this year, based on the couple days I've seen, which is not, it should not be the barometer by which everybody judges their thoughts. But I think they have a little bit of a ways to go still. And I don't think Griffin's in the mix right now. I'll just say that. Any more questions here? Rick Tange says, who'll be the starting D lineman? I think it's Thompson and Neal, right? And I think they're going to try to play a lot of two-down defensive linemen to get more of those linebackers on the field. But behind them, like Brandon Lane's going to play a lot. Brandon Lane is absolutely going to play a lot just based on what he's shown. He might be that number 3 guy. Bart McDonald will have a role in that, and it'll just be a rotation past that point. But I think Neal, Thompson, Lane, Hills will play some, Barton, McDonald. So you're going to get, and I think Jamel Howard can work in there. Ernest Willard can work. Dylan Johnson's going to work in there. Sorry, I'm kind of going through the mental Rolodex. I think that's kind of your 7 or so. Thompson looked good today. James Thompson looked good today. Had a really nice pressure. Okay. All right, we'll wrap it up there. I'm not seeing really any other questions. Justin P says you stayed in Platteville. I am. Okay. Yeah, we'll wrap it up there on Wisconsin. Thank you so much for tuning in. When you're done here, go check out Locked On College Football. That's our podcast on the Locked On Network, covering all things college football, from NIL deals to conference realignment, over there on the Locked On Podcast Network on Wisconsin. And we will definitely talk later. Going to be at practice again tomorrow. So send me any questions if you have them. Any players that you want me to keep an eye on, let me know. Other than that, thank you so much for tuning in as always on Wisconsin, and we will talk later.